Okay. Good. I'm not the only one wearing a hat. I don't feel bad. Thanks, Will.
Yep.
I can go put my hat on if you want.
The hair is getting a little bit long, Miss Donna.
And so's mine.
I need a hat. Chris, am I on?
I've got your audio, but I don't have your video. Hold on 1 second.
Go lay down.
There we go.
Lay
Okay.
down.
There you go. I can see you now.
Okay. I don't have a hat on, but I need a haircut.
My dog wants to be in the video, in the meeting too.
No hat?
Go lay down. No, go lay down. Go lay down.
Let's see here. Let me get him in here. Hey, David,
Yes.
I think you're one of the lucky ones because you don't have to have a hat.
Ha.
The follicle challenge are the ones winning out in this shutdown because
I don't know if that's lucky.
Okay, good point. I'll give you that much. Good point. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 so far.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Beaver. Good evening, sir.
Hey, good evening. I couldn't tell where I was on or not.
You're good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
He doesn't need a hat either.
That's true.
Hey. Hey, I will say I just got back from a 2-mile run and I decided to put on a dress shirt.
Yeah, but do you have pants on?
Yeah,
Yes.
stand up. We'd like to see what.
I'm wearing shorts.
Oh.
Shorts.
Call order. Let me
I don't see a picture of Donna. She got her video on.
I do.
take that.
She's not coming up.
Oh, it's on the rationale. That's why. Take that off.
Oh, I've got a cat, Donna.
You what?
I've just got a cat that's jumped up here on the table. So your dog and my cat can be.
Well, I may have to get up and put her in the room if she keeps barking. She's hearing voices that she's not used to.
Let me go put the cat out. Ugh.
Righty. Okay, Madam Chair, we now have a quorum.
Okay, good. I now got rid of a cat.
Okay. Lead.
What time? It's right at 6 o'clock. So who we've got? Who
We
just
have
came?
you, Miss Morency, Mr. Beaver, Mr. Sims, Mr. Moore, Miss Parker, and Miss Hopkins. We have 7.
Okay. Well, so you just call roll. So we've got 7, and we'll say if someone else comes on, that's great.
Yes, ma'am, will do.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order, and the meeting, and of course tonight is just a discussion of budget, and I have a lot of questions Doug, but I want to give other board members a chance. I don't want to hog all of it, and I'm sure they have them as well. So do any of you all need to speak to it, or you want to listen to me talk a while?
Can someone start by going over the basics of what was included in the packet?
Yes, I think that, Doug, would you do that? Give us a little preview.
Yep. So your 2-page packet, on the first page, you just have a summary of the revenues and the expenditures. I should have updated where it says last year's budget. That should just say expenditures on that first page. And then your second page has it broke down by the revenue code and then also by the department. So let's go over the proposals. Proposal 1 is SALY. So it's an acronym for same as last year, SALY. So proposal 1 is SALY, which would just be our same as last year budget, no step raise, no anything, just what we had last year, make do with what we got. Proposal 2 is the department head request. That's what DHR stands for. So this is the budget that the executive team got together and they got with their departments, and they determined what they needed. There's positions, there's requests for books, there's everything that they requested as if this was a normal budget year without any percentage raise across the board. So that's your proposal 2. And proposal 2 does have the step raises and benefit increase due to those step raises in it. Proposal 3 is step SALY. So I was just trying to keep with the same term, SALY. That's same as last year, but we go ahead, give a step raise, and we fund the benefit increase that goes with that step raise. So that's what that proposal is, proposal 3. Proposal 4 is proposal 3, the step raise plus last year's budget and benefits, plus the 3% raise for everybody across the board. Okay. And then proposal 5 is proposal 2 plus 3% across the board, which is the department head's request, which includes step raises and 3% across the board. So if you can see that first page, you can see that proposal 1 gives us a $327,000 surplus. And you can see that the rest of them give us a deficit of some sort. 5 million, 1 million, 3.2 million, and 7.3 million.
Okay. I have questions, Doug. I know I do. And my first question is, how come we didn't get a breakdown like we asked for, where we see what those department head requests were based on what was spent last year and what was spent this year? And let me give you a couple of questions, and this will be to Chris as well. When you talk about the SALY proposal, does that proposal include those expenditures that we made from fund balance last year? Is that included in that?
No, that is not included. That is based off of last year's original budget. So that is before any amendments. And what I thought the request was to compare what the department heads wanted to last year's budget. And so that's why I brought what I brought.
Okay, I thought we were going to actually see the difference. I looking at that proposal 2 with what they've asked for and $5 million in excess of without raises, without any consideration of the step raises and anything. I'd like to know what that is and what that means. I mean, how could we have such a huge amount that's not considering our staff, our support staff, all of that? And are there new positions in it? Obviously, we all got your email saying the situation that the county commission they have a maintenance of effort. They'll have to fund our budget up to what they did last year. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if we, looking at proposal, and I don't see how in the world tonight we can even get, I think we're June from even looking at this, Doug. You know that because first of all, the governor wants a $38,000 beginning salary across the state, everywhere. So that's an increase in funds. Is he going to fund it? That's money coming in. Is he going to fund any percentage of raise? Once again, they're meeting in June. Also, we've got more students than the BEP says that we have, so we should have another kick from that. I don't see why we're not going to be able to fund the step raises at the very least with those kind of figures coming in. And you said yourself the other night that what we may want to look at is into the year, if we're able to operate and have some fund balance issues and things in fund balance, that we can do some expenditures during the year. I don't want to get in the situation like we did last year when we begged the county commission for funds, and then all of a sudden we had a $3 million that we could spend, that we needed to spend, things we needed. It was unexpended balance. I understood that, but I don't want to get in that situation again. I think if we have things in this budget that we could, at some date, if we have a fund balance that we can purchase later, like we did the computers, like we did the textbooks, like we did. Honestly, I think in this environment, we're not going to be able to do much for athletics at this point. That's just me. I do not think we have enough information here. Maybe we can't really do anything till we know in June what all of those things that have to come in and have to be known then as to what's going to be. Do you agree?
I'd politely, I agree, but I also, on some things that you said, but I would also disagree on others. The guidance that I've been given from the comptroller's office to pass a budget with this commission and with the school board is to get a budget passed, because nobody on this meeting knows truly what's going to happen to our revenue. This could go really bad. The only thing we're hearing that is really good from the state is that they're not going to stop funding BEP.
Yeah.
And that I'm glad about. But any increase, our fund balance can't take a whole lot. I stated last meeting, October 2019, we had $235,000 in fund balance at the end of that month. Our payroll is 2.6 million. That's how close we were cutting it. And we did end up having a surplus for that year. We had a lot of open purchase orders, but with the revenue decrease, seeing that's going to happen, if I showed that reflection, the only reason that it doesn't look too bad on here is because I haven't decreased our sales tax $5 million, or the same as last year budget would be showing a deficit of 4.7 million. And that's because the commission's going to have to figure out how to fund that, or if they budget it, or how they're going to do it. But I see the BEP bringing in a couple $100,000 more between now and the end of July. And the comptroller's office, for the first time ever, the Office of State and Local Finance has been okay with us doing those budget amendments when things start coming in and projecting better than we expect. Every revenue that comes from the state without taking BEP into account is dropping 30%, even more so on the gas tax for the highway department. This is just, it's an economic problem. And I wanted to present the data. I also wanted, really just feedback from the school board on what you all would like to see going forward. I'm not asking, it's you all's decision on this. If you want to see more things, I'm happy. Like I said, please contact me at any time, and I'll get any information you ever want to see. I've got this broken down by object code. I've got it in any way you would want to see it. I just see that the funds aren't making sense. It doesn't make money sense. Even just the funding the step raise and losing, $1 million over the budget year to do that. If we get a couple $100,000 from BEP, I see us at a $600,000 deficit. And I just don't want us to be that close to not being able to meet payroll and having to go back to do a tax anticipation note. And if we end up having to do one, which I think we will, we'll end up having to do one from the county just to make sure that we meet payroll. things aren't looking good. And
I-
the guidance the comptroller's office sent me is to really just look at everything that you can cut to cut your revenues and your expenditures down. And I forwarded that letter out. And so that's the guidance I've been given from the state, which the state funds, 90% of this budget. And so I'm following their guidance. I'm following your guidance on whatever you would like to see and approve and send to the budget committee. And then I'll follow their guidance. I'm just at y'all's will.
Is there anyone else?
Ms. Parker has her hand raised.
All right, Ms. Parker?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Doug, thanks for the information, and I appreciate that. I think, though, I'm like Ms. Kinzer from the standpoint of I can't really evaluate proposal 2 at all with the information that we're given. And I don't necessarily put that on you because you can't account for what all is in each of the departments for what their requests were. Probably not to the detail that they could, but I think if we're going to really give that any consideration at all, they're going to have to provide us some detail about what exactly is included in there. And rather than go through and say, why is there, a $3 million jump here or a $100,000 jump there? We can do that, but I don't know how productive that's going to be tonight. I think that was something that we had requested. I think even in the work session that we have, and I just don't think that was provided from a department standpoint.
Okay. Chris,
Sure.
correct me if I'm wrong, but we were speaking this morning. The department head request is not even a reality. That's how
Nope.
much of a deficit that is.
No.
Even really proposal number 4.
Yeah, can you talk for a second? Yeah. Ms. Kinzer, can Doug and I talk for a little bit out loud?
I was listening to you and you're seeing me going, no, it's not a reality. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, so we've had,
yeah.
as South Central superintendents, we've had multiple conversations. Everybody is pretty much doing a continuing budget if they can even do a continuing budget. Some of our districts in the South are actually reducing because their revenues are coming in a lot worse than ours. So personally, I don't see how the board can pass any budget at this time that isn't just steps and raises and benefits, and then waiting to see how the revenues come in the early part of the fall. Because like Doug said, as he's advised us for pretty much the past 2 weeks as an executive team, last week the revenues were coming in. Doug, correct me if your figures are wrong. You were looking at revenues last week around like 10 to 15%, and now you're looking at 25 to 30% less than what they were last week.
I was at 15% because I was on the plan of that this is going to be a 1.5 month deal. We're going to be able to get through it. We're going to pray and hope that this doesn't continue and we don't see a second wave of it and it doesn't impact us economically and people don't start laying people off that are businesses in the area, because when that starts happening, those people can't spend money. Businesses don't make money. They can't pay their taxes. We don't get our money because they didn't pay their taxes. It's a cyclical, terrible circle of life situation. But yes, 15% is what I originally expected to lose. And when I had a conversation this morning specifically on gas tax and other state revenues, they said budget at least a 30% decrease on gas tax. So that I'm doing 33% for gas tax. I'm doing 27.5% for my business tax, my sales tax, my beer tax, and mixed drink tax, and that all impacts us. So, and if we can budget the same maintenance of effort revenue budget, on our revenue side, but the truth is, 16.8 million is in there for sales tax right now. About 12, if we do a 30%, about 12.8 million is going to come in. Where are we going to? And that's 4 million on top of the surplus deficit numbers that we have at the bottom of the page here. So that would mean if we passed last year's budget and we ended up short 4 million, we would have to eat 3.7 million out of our fund balance. And that's just with our last year's budget. And And I don't want to waste y'all's time, but if we want to get into details of the budget, I'm ready to do that. If y'all want to move forward without doing that, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with anything. I promise you that. I just, as long as you guys give me guidance and you tell me what you want to see, I'll get it to you.
Doug, I want to see the step raises some way or another. If it means cutting out some of the things that we can look at from last year, and that may be something in a later meeting. I don't see that we can accomplish anything at this meeting till we know what all the revenue is, what the governor's going to do, what the legislature's going to do. I don't think so. And the step raises are provided in the MOU, just so you know that. It's just something that it's about the only thing that teachers really are sure they're going to get. They haven't gotten the cost of living raise now in 3 years. So I think they probably, maybe they'll understand. I don't know that they would understand. And you know how I feel about building a budget on everything else but them when it's 80-something% of our budget. But that's my wish, is that we can find a way to include the step raises. And I understand the situation we're in, and I don't see that we can accomplish anything tonight. Even if you'd given us the figures on what the directors asked for and all, it wouldn't make any difference. Except that I just can't believe that they had a wish list that would be that expensive in this kind of environment. It didn't include salary.
It was before COVID happened. We had our budget finished before COVID was ever a thing. That's why it is what it is, because we had goals of expanding and doing good things, like we normally do.
And not only that, Ms. Kinzer, if you look at the proposal 3 steps, Sally, and you go all the way down to the bottom, 979, 272. If you remember last week, Doug recommended that he would be comfortable spending $1 million out of fund balance. So that 979, 272 comes in under that to balance the budget. But even if we have BEP increases, that shrinks that number that much even more, which will have those more accurate figures around this month, early next month. So. Yeah.
I don't remember him saying that. You would be comfortable with us budgeting $1 million out of fund balance?
Last meeting, I definitely was at 15% of revenue loss. Now I'm, I'll be honest, I'm a little uneasy about it, but what I can expect is that the BEP will come up.
Yes, I think it will.
July,
I looked at,
and that would be fine.
I looked at it again today, and I think it's no way it won't come up. But we won't know those figures till the end of May and maybe into June, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
No, it would be into July, because we get the July BEP estimate in July, correct, Dr. Marzak?
We'll get another one in May and another one in June, and then we'll get the last one probably early to mid-July. Yeah. Mr. Moore,
I would say we apply that to proposal 3 so that the step raises can be included, and then whatever overage to that could, if you feel like we can take some of that from fund balance.
Mr. Moore,
all right, thank you. So I've got a big long list of questions, so a couple of going here. Doug, what was I know you're just completely guessing right now on, what did you say the expected revenue shortfall might look like? You said it was a 4 million something number? It's
a little over 5 million on sales tax if we were to budget it at 30% decrease.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's see here. So I guess one of the questions I have is, if you look at the last year, now, are you guys basing that on the bare bones budget we passed in the first place and then went back and added things back into? So the problem I've got with that is that even that budget was, in my opinion, garbage. Not to be rude, but I mean, we cut so much out of that thing that it was, I don't know how we even use that as a baseline. And I'm not trying to intentionally increase the number. I'm just saying that number was so out of line with anything we did. I don't know how we even use that as a baseline. But if we are going to, I would ask that at the next meeting, can we have kind of an abbreviated version of what we added back in that the management team feels like it was necessary, things we should have had in there in the first place? Because in my mind, that would get us back to what I would consider our zero budget of what was last year.
Do you think we should add with that one-time capital expenditures or no?
No.
Okay.
No. Mm-mm.
No, but for example, when we went back and put the textbooks in, I absolutely think that should be included in last year's budget.
Okay.
And I'll just leave that up to you guys. I would next time we meet, if we could add that back in, I would appreciate that. Let's see what else I've got. Another question. When did the comptroller want us to have the this budget done?
June 30th,
When?
2020.
And what is our actual hard date for when we have to have it done?
So technically, it does say that we have to pass a budget by June 30th, but they passed a continuation budget procedure that we're allowed to automatically continue that budget. So usually it is around September, but the comptroller's office would frown upon that. I don't know what the result of what the consequences of not passing a budget by June 30th would be.
Okay. And just to be fair on that, I mean, considering these circumstances, I really don't care what they think. I mean, we need to do what we need to do to make sure we get our budgeting done right. So that's my opinion on that. So last thing, I would say that, and again, I know we're not going to be able to do much of anything tonight, and to agree with Ms. Kinzer's point, in my opinion, I would love, in the step raises to me need to be done one way or another. I just don't see how that's an option. However, on the other raises, to go the other direction on that, I just don't even think we need to be discussing any other kind of percentage raise at this point. There are too many people in our county that don't have jobs at all. And I just think it is in some ways disrespectful to even be talking about percentage raises above that at this point. If something changes in the next 2 months, I'm happy to revisit that. I just think it's in some ways it is disrespectful.
Oh my gosh, we agree. It's great.
Ms. Parker has her hand up.
Yes, Ms. Parker. Ms. Parker? I think she's got her hand on her, resting on her face.
No, I had it up. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
No, what I want to know though is, or what I would like for us to have some information on when we get back together. I understand the questions about the revenue and the uncertainty that exists there. But I feel like one of the areas that we as a board need to have more oversight over is the expenditures. And that's really where it comes down for us. I mean, we can't necessarily control what exactly comes in, but we can control how we spend it. I think that step raise, sorry, we're having dinner here. I think that one thing that I would like to see though is what we are going to need to educate children next fall. And I don't know what's going to happen with coronavirus or any of that, but I hope that we've got some plans in place for that. And if that's the case, I think we need to know what that's going to look like. If distance learning is going to be something that we're going to need, then what is going to be needed for that? Training for our teachers, devices, those type of things, just like textbooks. I mean, I think those are things that are going to have to be necessary. And there may have to be some adjustments into other areas. I mean, we may not be having an alternative instruction school environment if we're, you know, if everybody is alternatively instructing their children at home. So I really think that we need to figure out what exactly it's going to take to educate our kids next year in the best way possible. And that's something that I really want to see from staff. So, I mean, I know that'll probably be completely different than what their department head requests were, but I imagine there are some things that are in those department head requests. There are things that may or may not be, you know, that may be needed in this instance. And I just really would like for us to have some information on that, particularly on the expense side.
Okay, anyone, I'd like to hear from other board members. You know, pretty opinionated. I know I am, and I'd like to hear from, I know, let me just call on you. Mr. Beaver, what do you think?
Okay, I kind of like Ms. Parker. I'd like to see some preparation for if this thing comes back, and if we have to do distant learning and everything, what are we going to do to be prepared for that?
Mr. Sims.
Well, I was actually just thinking this. I know at the last meeting we gave Mr. Perryman some the go ahead to go on with some projects. Do we need to put a hold on those so we can possibly roll some extra money into fund balance? Or, I mean, I know this is a good time to be.
Mhm. He talked about the savings that he had from being closed and that sort of thing, and he was going to use some of that money. So that's a really a good point, that money might be something could roll into fund balance. Might be good to have an idea of what that is.
Yeah, I remember a 200 something number. I can't remember the exact number, but he was estimating 200,000. That when we're talking millions, that's a small amount, but
Add it with the increase and put that together, and you're almost at what we need for the step raises. So, good point. All right, who else? Ms. Hopkins.
Hey, I was thinking the same thing, kind of with Ms. Parker on that thing about the distance learning. With everything being so uncertain, we might be looking into the future of distance learning and what that would take for as an education, for the kids. But with the budget standpoint, I agree with you a lot about the revenue. We just don't know. It's certain things we don't know, but we would need to know, the step raises, what the government's going to do, how everything we just don't know, but we need to see that to be able to make good decisions and good budgeting.
I would hope we could have a budget in July once we know all the figures that come in. I know they've said June the 30th, but July seems to be much more realistic to me, Doug. And I know you've got a huge problem with the budget committee and the commission and the shortfall that they're going to have to come up with. We're all in this together. There's no question about it.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Did somebody want to speak?
Yeah, Mr. Moore has his hand up, and then I need to address a couple things, some information for you guys.
Oh, Mr. Moore.
Okay, so along those lines as well, I guess I would be interested in what this, I guess, kind of goes back to the department head request, which again, we all agree is way out of line for what we're dealing with. But I would be definitely interested in the principals going back and looking at maybe what they requested before all of this took place and had to scramble and figure out distance learning and these things going on. I would definitely be interested if maybe they want to rethink some of the things they had requested to use at their own school level that may help address some of these things if we deal with this next year or if we deal with this in the fall. I think that gets kind of to what Ms. Parker's point was. But I think maybe now that they've had 2 months of trying to figure out what education looks like completely different than it did, that may be something they could go back and look at things they requested and have a completely different perspective on other things they may need to request instead.
Dr. Marzak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So a couple things. One, first off, you have COVID-19 money coming. Murray County Schools is going to get about $2.1 million. 20%.
Wow.
Yep, 20%. That's one-time money. 20% of that can be spent by June 30th. The other 80% cannot be spent until July 1st. After July 1st, sorry. This money is for one-time expenditures related to COVID-19, such as professional development for teachers about how to have sanitary needs in the school or in the classroom. The other one is to purchase distance learning material for kids, such as laptops and software. So you're going to have that money to budget after July 1. The second thing you need to consider is any money that we have sent now, between now and June 30th, will most likely need to be moved over and spent in special education. Because we've been closed since March the 17th, no student has been receiving special education services. Once we are back in session, or once we are open as a state, we have to start providing compensatory education services to our special education students to bring their IEPs up to date by June 30th. That means that, according to Ms. Ventura today, she's going to have to probably hire anywhere from 30 to 35 teachers that are going to be working full-time all the way up until June 30th to provide special education services for kids. That's going to be a large chunk of money. That's going to take a lot of money to do that. But we don't know yet if that is going to happen because Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, along with many legislators, such as Senator Lamar Alexander, is trying to pass a bill in Congress in order to relax IDEA laws between now and June 30th. So if that happens, we might not have to provide compensatory ed services, which means you can use those savings from this budget before June 30th, and you don't have to spend them on special education services. So when Mr. Moore, when you're talking about going to the principals and talking to them, I think that's a great idea. And I think that's a good thing to spend some of that COVID-19 money on. That's one-time money. What you don't spend by June 30th, 2021 will get sent back to the federal government. So it's use it or lose it. We haven't yet received guidance from the U.S. Department of Ed through the Tennessee Department of Ed about how to access those funds, but that should come when, in the next couple of weeks, whenever they send it.
We've got a meeting May 7th, Dr. Mack, on getting started with those funds.
Gotcha. Okay, we haven't heard anything. We've just heard it's coming, but we haven't heard any dates on when guidance is coming for COVID-19 money. But one of the things that I think, the board needs to prepare about, that Doug and I have talked about, is there's not going to be any more revenue coming this year from the county commission than we got last year. The last couple of years, they've told us, if we ever hit a recession, we're in trouble. Well, we hit it. And so I think our ceiling's been met. I think proposal 3 right now is our best option moving forward. And then definitely using those COVID-19 one-time monies to really look next year about what we can do to impact potential further closure of COVID-19. But 2.1 million coming, 20% can be spent now. So you're looking at about 1.8 million if you spend any by June 30th. That's it for me.
Can those funds be used for if we have to go to distance learning in preparing for that? They can be spent on laptops, software, Wi-Fi hotspots, and network infrastructure upgrades. They can be spent on those things. Okay.
Well, I have a question about, can I jump in? Sorry.
Yes, please.
I know you're mentioning on the COVID-19 money on laptops and that kind of stuff. What about professional development? I said this last week, professional development for the teachers to identify the shortfalls. That seems like it's got to be part of this.
No, you can only spend the professional development money on PD for teachers about sanitary conditions in the classroom.
Wow.
That seems like the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
That's what we have so far. That may change when we get that guidance and direction, but they said the professional development is around cleanliness in the classroom.
Yeah. We also cannot use it on payroll, which is unfortunate.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Moore, you can use it on software in order to assess students to identify what they're doing well in and what they're not doing well in. You can use it on that. But I would encourage us, if we have to make that work, I really would love, I know I just said a minute ago that I don't think we can talk about raises. What I would love to do is really invest in the teachers to have some skills that, in my opinion, they benefit the entire district. They make our teachers better teachers. And if we can help to identify individual shortcomings in students, I think we're all better off. I just think that would be an excellent use of our money. And I think it really, in my mind, goes back to really benefiting our teachers too, to make them better teachers and better at their craft. So, and I think it pays off, but that's just me.
I have a question.
Yeah, Ms. Christie, I'm sorry I left you out a while ago when I was calling roll here.
That's okay. I know that we had talked about that homeschool program. Is there some way that we can tie that into if we have the coronavirus problem again, that we could use that program for I think it's more for high school kids, am I right? Or
so are you talking about the virtual academy that we presented last month?
Yes.
Right, and we approved.
Yes.
Is there any way that we can use that to help us out?
Yes.
And what grade levels is that? I don't remember.
High school.
I think, Dr. Woodard, did we include 7th and 8th grade in there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that proposal was 7 through 12, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was 7 through 12. And that would be a really big help to us. You know, the problem that we have is that we just have some kids that have, they don't have Wi-Fi access in certain outlying parts of the county. That's the big challenge that we have. But, you know, the virtual school will be a big help to us.
I just remembered us having that, and I thought that that might be something that we could utilize if they're not in class, if they're having to do online.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm sure you may have more to say, but I would say generally we feel like option 3 is what we feel like we would like to try to reach that point. We hope to use any excess revenues we get for BEP toward that, and if we have to use some fund balance, we will, but that, I really think that's fine. But we also would like to be able to see at the next meeting, and I don't know that we need to have, I think we're scheduled to have a meeting on the 7th. I don't know that we can't accomplish anything till June. So what do you know, I'll listen to anybody else about that, but I think we would like to see those requests that were made and see the two things together and where they felt like the need was, even though I don't foresee us funding them, but at the same time, it would be information for us. Am I right?
I'm
Chair
gonna do
Gensler?
Yes, Mr. Moore.
I would say, I mean, if you guys are okay with us waiting until we actually get to a point where we can do something with this, I see no reason. If we can't do anything by the 7th, I don't.
No,
I like you guys, but we don't have to sit and stare at each other for 30 minutes if we really can't get anything done. So if
no.
the executive team could just bring us some information when we can actually start to do something and schedule it at that point, I would be happy with that.
I would think early June, there might be more information. I just don't see us passing a budget until we have all that information. But at least, Mr. Laconin, it kind of gives you somewhat of our feelings about what proposal we are leaning toward. And so, you know, from that standpoint, then we'll go from there. Is there anybody else? I don't know if there's anybody I haven't called on, or I don't think Mr. Fulbright's on. I'm not sure.
No, he's not. Ms. Parker has her hand raised.
All right, Ms. Parker.
Okay. I agree. I don't want to get together if we don't have anything that we can really talk about, but I don't necessarily want us to wait until June to start working on this. I just think that we need to start figuring out the expenditure part sooner rather than later. If by June 30th we need to spend 20% of $2.1 million, I think we need to have information
Good
about
point.
that very soon. And then how we potentially are going to look at spending the other 80%. I think we need some proposals on that sooner rather than later.
Well, why don't Dr. Marzak, why don't you all look at it, and we can, at the board meeting Monday, we can look at the calendar and see when we can schedule another meeting, when there'll be more information appropriate, maybe toward the end of the month.
Yeah, we have, with not knowing with special education, with still not receiving information how to access the grants, we're still kind of in waiting limbo at this point with some of those funds. So I agree.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can I just say, can y'all have like a plan A and a plan B? Like if we do have to have special ed, this is how we think we're going to spend that money. If we don't have special ed, we don't need to be waiting until we find out like we got a grant tomorrow. You know, this is how we access the funds, and we're just putting things together, in my opinion. I think we need to have some contingency plans at this point. Otherwise, we're going to be very reactive, and our goal as a board has been continually to be proactive in those situations. And I hope that we can continue to do so.
Okay, any other discussion then?
I just want to recap. These are some of the things I've heard tonight as usable feedback that I can bring back to you for discussion. We want to see a comparison to the amended 1920 budget with also pulling out those one-time capital expenditures for athletics and things of that nature, the one-offs that we did. Mm-hmm. You would like to review an explanation of the department head request and understand why the number is higher and what department heads were wanting to do with those funds, and have those things, have those department heads on the meeting so that they can answer any questions pertaining to their budget. We want a list of what we need to educate children next fall, whether it's distance learning or whatever scenario we may be under, and specifically what do we need and how do we fund it. We want to have that discussion. And I also got to reach back out to principals, have them provide feedback now that things have changed, and possibly redo their requests and bring those back to the school board. And then I did have a comparison to actuals, which are on our financial reports, to compare a full year's actuals to a year in which we're, really 3/4 of the way done. Do you all want to see that real quick? I've got one last thing that I was gonna say, but
Sure.
see that? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I have is how we would like to spend the CARES Act money, which is just over $2.1 million. And
Definitely.
get together as an executive team and send a proposal to the school board.
That sounds good. I can't think of anything you've left off. That sounds great. So that we'll try to have that a meeting sometime toward the end of the month. Will that be time enough? Or maybe you'll have enough information about the 2.1 to know how you can spend it and what is spendable and all of that.
We will know pretty much everything we need to know on the CARES Act by May 18th, because we have 2 trainings, one on May 7th and one on May 11th. And then there's a final one on May 18th. So that we're doing it with Scott Gaines. The money's going to actually run through title. So yeah, we'll know a lot more on May 7th actually, but it actually happens on that day. So maybe the week after May 7th.
After May 7th. Well, okay. That would be between the meeting and the work session. If you have it ready by then, sure.
How about May 20th for a budget work session?
May 20th? I think that would be work session, wouldn't it?
It's a Wednesday. We could change the day.
May 20th works for me. How do you guys feel about that?
Fine with me.
Oh, I got a thumbs up. Let's see. Mr. Sims?
Yep.
Ms. Morency?
Will that be a Zoom meeting or will that be an in-person meeting?
We'll make that decision once the governor gives us the go-ahead.
Okay. I should be able to make that.
Okay. Ms. Parker?
Thumbs up.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Beaver?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
May 20th, 6 p.m. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Laconin, and thank all of you. If there's anything else.
Yes, Ms. Kinzer, Ms. Ventura
Yes.
just sent me at 6:24 tonight, 20 minutes ago. Betsy DeVos ruled that she will not providing any waivers for compensatory ed. So according Ms. Ventura, she said she's going to develop 3 plans. 1 cost of summer school, 2 compensatory ed during the school year, and 3 combo of compensatory ed during school and summer. So anything we do in the summer will probably eat most of our savings, but she'll provide those on May 20th. So we'll know.
Well, that's a really good way to end the meeting.
Sorry.
I know. Well, good. At least we've got an answer on that. So
We do have an answer, so that's good.
all right. Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay. Thank you, guys. I'll see you for the regular board meeting in a while. And you're going on honeymoon, aren't you, Mr. Moore? When is your honeymoon? Huh?
I was supposed to be in Mexico last week, and they're not letting anybody go there right now.
No, not a good idea.
So I work every day.
Well, I sit and watch you work, I guess. So anyway, it's interesting times, that's for sure. Well, anyway, you all have a good evening.
All right, take care, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.